Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a premier field engineer focused on management technologies. Today's discussion will be detailing the BitLocker integration that has been introduced into Microsoft Endpoint Manager, ConfigMgr. This was something that was first introduced in 1910 of this release, and we'll detail the requirements a little bit later, but wanted to call that out up front. In terms of our agenda, what is BitLocker management? And what is specifically BitLocker and ConfigMgr integration, why BitLocker management matters, and again, why BitLocker and ConfigMgr integration. Then we'll actually walk through that integration. We'll talk about the requirements, we'll see how it works, we'll talk about configuring, actually see it in action, and then we'll end up with some troubleshooting tips and tricks. Okay, so what is BitLocker management? Well, specifically, and notice I didn't ask the question, what is BitLocker? BitLocker is disk encryption, right? So that's kind of there. But what is BitLocker management? Well, in order to encrypt the disks, in order to do this well at scale, there needs to be some way to be able to manage this in a broad way. So managing at enterprise scale. So BitLocker management designed for the enterprise, right? Again, management at scale. BitLocker management will introduce things like help desk capabilities, being able to enable the help desk to support BitLocker key management, key retrieval, things of that nature, offering the user some self-service capabilities, letting them go out and recover their own key if needed, reducing the requirement, even though we do have the help desk there, reducing the requirement for calls to the help desk, right? BitLocker management will, by necessity, manage key escrow, key storage in case something is needed for recovery, right? Key escrow, key management kind of go hand in hand. The traditional way, historically, that this has been handled is through MBAM, right? And so that is a technology that is targeted for deprecation. It's still got, at least as of this recording, it's still got a good runway on it, but wanting to have an alternative for that, and so ConfigMgr and BitLocker management integration is alive now, and you can start to think about how you might want to do that, especially if you have an extensive MBAM deployment already. So again, what is BitLocker and ConfigMgr management integrated, right? So specifically, the idea here is that the capabilities of MBAM are now integrated into ConfigMgr. I'll show you how that's represented in 1910. Being able to reduce your infrastructure, so no need to have ConfigMgr infrastructure and a separate MBAM infrastructure. You can leverage the ConfigMgr infrastructure you have for being able to handle your BitLocker management needs. Being able to have the ConfigMgr database instead of having to maintain one again for MBAM, right? All of it's kind of in the ConfigMgr database. The portals, the help desk and the self-service portal that are popular with MBAM are in fact retained, and key encryption is supported. So you can absolutely store your keys in the ConfigMgr database, and to do that with plain text, that's an option. The other way is to enable support for encryption in the ConfigMgr database, and I'll show you that as well. So why BitLocker management, right? Well, kind of talked about it a little bit. Automation, right? And this is, again, BitLocker management just kind of in generic terms. You know, automation, being able to automate the process of encrypting volumes on client computers across the enterprise. Security, being able to allow security officers to quickly identify and determine the compliance state of individual computers or even the total enterprise itself in terms of disk encryption. Same security officers being able to easily audit access to recovery key information. Right? The help desk, being able to reduce the workload on the help desk and to still be able to assist with BitLocker pin and recovery key requests that users might make, right? This empowers the users to do a lot of self-service stuff themselves, right? So why then integrate this into ConfigMgr? Again, some of the same things. Automation. We already have ConfigMgr in the environment that is built for automation. So by integrating MBAM into Config Manager, it kind of affords the best and most robust management solution that there is. Existing infrastructure, in many cases, Config Manager is already deployed. And so plugging into that infrastructure for BitLocker management makes a whole lot of sense. Reporting, right? Being able to leverage Config Manager reports and retain some of the reports that are in MBAM already is important. And then finally, a path forward. So standalone MBAM, I've mentioned, has been deprecated. The date is set for that. It's a ways off still as of this recording, but it has been slated for that. So being able to move there to integration now, or to plan that integration, to be able to test that integration, is important, that you have enough time for that, right? Okay. So what are the requirements of integrating BitLocker with Config Manager? Well, a few. So Config Manager 1910 is where we introduced this, right? So you do need to be on a minimum of 1910, and as of this recording, 1910 is the latest version that is available, all right? In 1910, we require an SSL-enabled management point in order to do BitLocker management. Now, this one's interesting because there are some, I'll just go ahead and mention this, there are some discussions, don't know for sure what it's going to look like until it shows up in the product, but this is kind of a starting point. There will be enhancements is the plan to this, right? And so right now, for example, we don't support enhanced HTTP, but that may happen over time, right? So right now, as a starting block, we are requiring SSL-enabled management points in order for this to work. So one really important thing along those lines is before you go forward and test BitLocker policy and go down that route, make sure that your MP and client are configured and communicating by SSL so that you know that has a good chance of working, right? So one other thing, there's a BitLocker component that's actually added to the management point. I'll show that to you. And so so the other thing too, I'll just mention as well, you see down the fourth bullet point, IIS server. So there is an IIS server required to host the portals, the help desk portal, the self-service portal. In my lab, in my demo, I've separated that IIS server for the help desk and the self-service portals from my management point. You don't have to do that. You can plug them all into one, right? The reason I did that is my management point is in SSL. My help desk and self-service portals in my lab are not running in SSL. We recommend that they do, but they work fine without it, right? So I point that out. Reporting services, right? We need a reporting services point in order to stage the BitLocker reports and have them out there. And then I already mentioned the IIS server. I'll mention this again, though. There's one component that we do document. It's in the documentation that we require, and that's ASP.NET 4.0 in order to install these portals. Make sure you have it there, because if you don't, you're going to have challenges, and it might not look familiar at first. Once you look at the error, it actually is, but indicative that you need ASP.NET 4.0, but make sure you have that on ahead of time. And then finally, permissions. You do need to be a full Config Manager admin to create and manage BitLocker policy, and you need SQL sysadmin rights for running the portal installation scripts, which I will reference more in a minute. Okay, so how does this all work? So just a quick diagram to kind of give you an idea, right? Number one, the Config Manager admin is going to create this assumes that the infrastructure is ready, right, which we'll get into. But the Config Manager admin creates your BitLocker policy and deploys it. And then step number two, the policy is deployed to the SSL-enabled management point. If this is the first BitLocker policy deployment, the MP MBAM components are installed. Step number four, the client is going to retrieve and implement the policy. If this is the first time that the policy is retrieved, BitLocker policy is retrieved by a client, then the MBAM agent will be installed automatically behind the scenes onto the client. Step number five, the drive encryption is going to happen. The recovery keys will be stored off to the Config Manager database. And then down here, I have just some graphics representing help desk users, self-service portal users, whatever, that are working with IIS directly to access the MBAM portals, which will let them do the things that they might want to do. All right, and then I have another graphic here, just how it works in terms of the BitLocker management lifecycle. This is from our docs, right? It's kind of an ongoing process where we will deploy our BitLocker keys, we'll have compliance and reporting, we'll have recovery key management, and so on, right? So this is part of it as well. Okay, so let's get to the fun stuff. Let's get into configuring this and how it works. So we're going to break this down into the various phases. So the first thing is to make sure that you have your management point configured for SSL. Now, in order to do that, in order to configure IIS itself to support SSL, which is where the MP lives, so the MP has to have the IIS server set for SSL first. In order to do that, you need a certificate. It's a very easy certificate to get based on the web server certificate template. But I'm not going to go into the details of that here. I've actually gone through that in several other sessions, so I won't belabor the point here. The docs are pretty clear about that. I will show you where you have that certificate configured in IIS. So let me pull in my MP right now and take a look at that. Okay, so here's my management point, I believe, yes. Administrator, if I can type. Log into that, and we will go into the IIS portal as soon as this comes up. So launch that, administrative tools, and then IIS. Okay, so get rid of that. Cool. Go away. All right, so here's my IIS portal. This is already installed. So if I go down to default website, right here, right? So I'm going to right-click and edit bindings. So 443 is what I care about, so I'm going to edit that. I've already chosen my cert. Again, the process for that, creating the cert, enrolling the cert, I'm not demonstrating here, but I do have the cert visible. The way I know that this cert, and I have several, right? How do I know which one is correct? It's by viewing the cert and confirming what certificate template issued the cert. I can go down and look right here. So this is ConfigMgr web server for my lab, so I know that I have the right template there, so I'm good, right? And then I also have to go into the ConfigMgr console and shift this server into SSL mode. So let me pull in the ConfigMgr console real quick, and we will show where this management point is shifted into SSL mode. Let me do that real quick here. And as soon as the console comes up here, open that up. Ooh. Sorry, let me get all this junk out of the way. Cool. All right. All right, so let me go down here to administration, make the console bigger, and then site configuration, and then site system roles. Here is my MP, right there. And so I have the management point installed right here. If I double click on it, you'll see that I have it configured for HTTPS mode right there, right? So this is set up. It is communicating in SSL mode. One thing that I want to do, I mentioned at the beginning, is to confirm that all of this is communicating correctly and the client can get to it. So I haven't gotten to the client yet, but that the client can get to it. One of the ways that I can do that is by looking at the MP control log. And so the MP control log, oops, that's the older one, doesn't matter really. Let me get the current one. Come on, close. Let me get the current one. It's going to open a notepad, but that's fine. So I'm going to go down to the bottom just to see what's happening right now. HTTP test request succeeded. Basically, you can see that I'm selecting a cert. So it says HTTP. It's interesting. So wait a minute. This actually is not working. Installation still in progress. That's interesting. I wonder if the fact that I had it shut down for a while, this didn't run, and so I need to make sure that's good. Let me pause the video and I'll fix that and come back. Okay, apologies, I fixed that issue. Found out what it was. It helps if you have an IP address actually assigned to your machine, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so this is the log that I just did, and so you can see that I'm selecting a cert here. I actually did change the certs as part of my troubleshooting, but that wasn't the issue. Where is it? Selected the cert, so I don't know if that's a different thumbprint. It probably is. I think it was, because I deleted all of the workstation auth certs, but that's neither here nor there, because the issue was I didn't have an IP address. But either way, so we are going through and checking the SSL is enabled. Call to HTTP succeeded for port 443, status 200. So I know that my MP is in fact communicating with SSL. So let me relaunch the IIS page. And so I'm going to go ahead and proactively show you this because I've already got it configured. I do have policy deployed. So let me go ahead and show you this. I mentioned that the MBAM component is added to the site management point whenever you deploy policy. Here is that MBAM virtual directory right there, right? So that's on the MP. So we've got the MP in SSL mode. We've confirmed that it is actually communicating in SSL mode. No problem. One of the other things I mentioned is wanting to make sure that your client is successfully configured into SSL communications with your MP. So this is my Windows 10 test client. Let me just log into it and confirm it has an IP address real fast, because it should. I know what I did on mine, but either way, let me confirm that it has an IP address as soon as the desktop comes up. Okay, there's the desktop. So let's open up command prompt. Do an IP config, and wow, look, it doesn't have one either. So let me go ahead and just statically assign the IP address. So full disclosure, one of the reasons why is that I have had a little bit of issues with the server hosting my DHCP, and I've got it turned off right now, so it makes sense. I thought we still had one assigned, but we don't, so let me get one assigned real quick, and I will be right back. Okay, so I'm back, and I have everything with an IP address, so I'm just going to ping my management point, because I need to make sure I can communicate. cmmp.tailspintoys. Okay, bam, and so I have good communication here. So I know that I can talk to my MP. No problem. So I'll just leave that up, and I'm going to go to the control panel, and we'll look real quick at the ConfigMgr applet and be able to see that it is in fact communicating in PKI mode. That's important, right? To make sure that it's communicating in PKI mode. Now, how do you install the client using PKI mode? Well, if it's a brand new client, there's a switch you can use, which I'll show you in a second. If it's an existing client, then during its normal location requests and cycles, it should learn about your SSL-enabled MPs. And because our selection criteria, we prefer SSL-enabled MPs, if we have a client cert or a workstation auth cert on the machine that we can use to communicate with that SSL MP, then we will do that. Right? Another way to say that, let me just kind of go through this because it was a question that I was asked about this. Will existing clients be able to switch and use the SSL-enabled MP? The answer is yes, if they have been provisioned with the appropriate certificate. If they have not, then they are not capable of SSL, and they will continue to use non-SSL. So that leads to the other question that kind of started that discussion. Can you have both an SSL-enabled MP and a non-SSL-enabled MP in the same site? And the answer is yes, you can absolutely do that, right? So this is there. Now, I want to make sure that I'm able to communicate with my SSL-enabled MP, and so the log on the client, actually before I do that, let me show you how would I install this as a client if, in fact, it was not installed with the client software. So I'm not in the directory for CCM setup, so I'll just type CCM setup, use PKI cert, and then SMS site code equals you know, XYZ, whatever yours is, and then SMS MP equals HTTPS : whack whack, and then FQDN of your MP. So that will tell it to go talk to that MP immediately for install, so it'll go ahead and connect to it, right? Okay, so the other thing I want to make sure of is that this client is in fact communicating successfully with the SSL enabled MP. So the way I'm going to do that is go into my logs directory. So I'm in the logs directory. I'm going to look at CCM messaging right here. So I'm going to pull that up and scroll down to the bottom, and we will check. So let's see, sending outgoing message, outgoing message. Let's see if I can successfully submitted. Outgoing message requires delivered to endpoint, and so on. Let me look around here. Okay, so if I scroll up a little bit, I can check even further in the log. I see that I'm using my SSL MP, trying to anyway, and I can see some different things going on with it in terms of compressed size, whatever. So it looks like it should be okay. We'll know in a minute whenever we actually try to do this live with some endpoint protection policy. So I'll go ahead and minimize that out of the way. So that's setting up the MP, setting up the client, right? Now, let's move to the next step. The portals. So you do need to install the, well, do you have to? No, you don't really have to, but in practical purposes, you want to install the portals. That would be the help desk portal. This will install the self-service portal as well. So the first thing you need to do, right, is identify which server is going to host these portals. This does not have to be on a ConfigMgr server. In my lab, I am using a just standalone IIS server. Let's go ahead and bring that into the picture so that we can play around with it. So here is my IIS server here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and log in. Cool. And so some of the prerequisites that we need .NET 3.5, .NET 4.5. We also need that ASP 4.0, right, installed on the machine in order for this portal setup to work. So I've already got these on here. I've actually also got ASP 4.0. The link for the download for ASP standalone installer is in our documentation. You can just grab that and install it. Now, I need to grab the software to install the portals. So this portion of it was just to identify the IIS server, just to get all the prereqs installed, make sure we have ASP 4.0 on there. We do. Also, I would recommend having this SVC trace viewer. So SVC trace viewer will allow you to look at some of the logs that are produced by the portals and do so in troubleshooting. We'll get back to that a bit later. But this is what I need to get now. So I'm going to jump a little bit ahead. Let me pull this back out, just shift the slide, and we'll move right back on in. So we're going to prepare for portal installation, but we need to then install the portals. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to first copy the installation files from the ConfigMgr site server. I've got them here, right? It's 2 files. But let me show you where I got them. So I'm going to go ahead and log on to the ConfigMgr site server, or map a drive to it. Server CMSA1, $, great. And so let's go down to the ConfigMgr install directory, ConfigMgr, and then bin, and then x64, and I'm going to search for MBAM right there, right? So there's a couple of files. There's the MBAM, the MBAM website and MBAM website installer. Those are the 2 files you need. The MBAM website installer is actually a PowerShell script. So I have those here. And so we're going to go and demonstrate. I've already got them, right? But I want to go and demonstrate how to actually install these portals. Okay, so to do that, I'm just going to open up ISE, PowerShell ISE. I'm going to do it in ISE. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I'm going to. So, oops, just ISE. Great. and I'm going to run that as administrator. Cool. And so I have the script on my clipboard. I'm going to just paste in, or the command line for the script, I'm going to paste in the command line. Right? Now this formatting, I'm going to have to tie up loose ends a little bit because it has some odd spacing in it. But let me just use that as an opportunity to tell you about it. So this is the PowerShell script I'm referencing. I haven't, this would fail right now because I haven't navigated to the directory. But then the next thing I'm going to do is pass in my SQL Server name. So this is my SQL Server name. And then I'm going to give it the database. Another switch here that I'm not using would be to specify the instance name for SQL. I'm using the default instance. If you're using the default instance, you don't need to supply the instance name. In fact, one individual I know, I've not tried it really, but one individual I know has said if you put the instance name in here, it will error out the script. Don't know, haven't tried it, but don't need it because I'm using the default instance. So here's my SQL database name. So that's where my my ConfigMgr database name. Here's my reporting web service URL right here. Right, so this is the FQDN to my reporting server. And then my help desk users group name. So let me clear that up a little bit. Again, spacing issues here. Where'd my cursor go? There it goes. Okay. So one word about the help desk users group name and the other two group names that I want to specify here. You can put in whatever group name you like. You can call it whatever you want. Just know that this script does not validate the existence of that group or the proper spelling of that group. It just goes with what you put in. So make absolutely sure your group name is correct and accurately spelled when you put it in here. So this is the MBAM help desk group name, MBAM help desk. That's what I'm using. Could be whatever you want. The help desk admin's group name. So again, clear up a space here. So I'm calling this MBAM help desk admins. And then this one as well. So the report user's name right here. And then finally, site install both. So what you're saying here is what do you want to install? Do you want to install the help desk portal? Do you want to install the self-service portal? Do you want to install both, right? And so if you want both, then it's both. If you want the individuals, then it's the individuals. And actually, let me go back and edit this script because I know I changed the name of these groups. So I just spelled that out so it's obvious, but I'm calling my groups in practice. My reporting users is MBAM-RU. My help desk admins is MBAM-HDA. Again, doesn't validate the name of the script or the name of the group, so you want to make sure. And then the help desk is simply HD, MBAM HD, right? Okay, so I'm going to test run this just to show it to you. Hang on just a sec. All right, so I think the script is right. Let me just go ahead and run this. Again, it's already installed. Not a big deal. Oops, yeah, I told you. I didn't change directory, did I? So change to the desktop. There we go. And then run that again. Make sure it's all right. Yeah. So I'm going to run that. So it's going to execute. And, well, I think it's going to execute. I think I have the spacing wrong. Let me just go back here and resolve. Oh, there it goes. Okay, fine. Take a second. So it's just running. It's unpacking some different things. It's going to give you an error or two because it's already got some things in here, right? But it's continuing on, and it will finish up here after in just a couple of seconds. Okay, so it's finished, right? Now, again, I've already got it installed, which is why you saw some of the warnings here. Let me just show you. So here's where it's unpacking everything, and then it's trying to move my temp folder where I unpacked everything into inetpub. You can't because I've already got this directory and it's in use, and so that's what's happening. But then we go through and reset the ACLs on the folders, and we're done, right? So that will, in fact, install the portals, right? Now, again, specify your own information in the command lines. Make sure that your user groups are named correctly before you run them through the portal. And so now that we have this installed, let's go back in, and I'll show you in IIS here on this server. I had two web portals. I have the help desk web portal, and I have the self-service web portal under default website, right here and right here, right? So let's start with the, well, let me start by showing you the application pool as well. So there is an MBAM application pool that is here. Now, a couple of things. So if you look at the MBAM app pool and you edit the settings for the MBAM app pool, let me go here, right? And you scroll down, you'll notice that the user account is network service. Typically, I've not really messed with standalone MBAM, but typically, as I understand it with standalone MBAM, you have an actual service account assigned here as a way to run this portal, and then you have to make sure that you have the SPN for that registered. Here it's network service, and there's nothing in the docs to say go register an SPN for this, right? We'll talk about that more in a minute, but just want to call that out. So let's go try to access this portal. We'll start with help desk, and since I'm here in IIS, I'll just say go browse it from here. And so we have the IIS portal for the help desk. Now, I'm not going to go through each item in great detail. I'll just call them out. Here's the overview page. Here's the reports page where we will actually see the recovery audit report. The other reports are in ConfigMgr, so I don't forget to talk about those. Let me pull in ConfigMgr and show those to you real quick. So here's ConfigMgr. Let's go look at monitoring and look at reporting, and then reports, and then I will look at BitLocker. There we go. And so I do have some BitLocker management reports up here that I can go look at. All right, let's get that out of the way. So here's also where you go in for drive recovery and fill in some different detail, and then for the TPM recovery as well. Oops, let me get that back up on the screen. There, okay, so over here. Go away. Move that over, so managing my TPM right there. Right, so those are the things you can do through the help desk portal. And get rid of all of those, and then the self-service portal is where the user would be able to go and access various things that they might care about. So this is actually the default portal. Now, in order to use the portal here, you need to have actually logged on to the system that you're trying to recover at least one time. But while I'm here, most likely you don't want to leave this as the default Contoso IT. So while I'm in here, in IIS, you do have the ability to customize that. So you can go into your application settings right here and customize any of these. So for example, mine, now be careful, don't change anything in the name column, that will break things. But you can come over here to edit, right? And oops, I said that, let me click on it. So mine is not, my lab is Tailspin Toys. So I'm going to edit this setting and call it Tailspin Toys, right? And hit OK. Now this change goes into effect immediately. So if I then go back to the default website or to the portal and browse and bring it back up, then this time it's going to come up and say Tailspin Toys. There it is, right? So there are some properties there that you can edit if you like. Now, while we're here, let me take you through a little bit of just understanding where things are. So if we saw through the install of these portals that it added some information to INetPub. If we go look at INetPub, you will see that we have a BitLocker section, and there's a folder for the help desk website, a folder for the self-service website. There's logs for both. Now, if you don't have any logs created yet, then you won't have these folders. I do, let me minimize this in the background, I do have some a log or two in each one, right? They're very small and dated, right? But I do, and so I can bring this log in to see what's going on. So here's my SVC trace viewer. This is an SVC log. It contains one line, but this log viewer helps you remove some of the formatting, the XML formatting, and actually see what's going on. So this is an error that's actually calling out that it can't find its compliance database. I've looked at this with a few colleagues just to make absolutely sure, and this log plus, or this error, errors in this log related to the compliance database, it's an artifact. There's nothing wrong here that we can find anywhere. And even talking, yeah, I said that, talking with some colleagues, there's nothing they can find. They get it too, but yet everything works fine for them. So I believe this is a holdover, kind of artifact error message from MBAM standalone, right? And you'll see some similar kind of things with the self-service portal right here. And then also, in terms of logging, we can go into the event log. So let me go in and run event viewer. I can type it right. There we go. And launch that. Oh, come on. I don't know why it does that sometimes. There. That'll launch it for sure. And go down to Applications and Services. And then under there, after it comes up, Microsoft. Take it just a second to get past it. There we go. And Microsoft, and then Windows. And then there's MBAM under here. Right? So MBAM Web. So these are for your web consoles, and we have admin, and we have operational, right? So operational, you don't see any challenges. Admin, you do. And this is another example where it's talking about the need to register an SPN. My colleagues get that too. Again, I believe this is a holdover artifact from MBAM standalone. There is nothing wrong here that we can find. Everything works fine. There's no need to go manually register a SPN. This is what I was referring to when I showed you the network service, is the account assigned to the application pool. Typically that's a service account, and typically you would register an SPN for the service account, but in this case, doesn't seem like there's anything wrong at all. It's just kind of logging an artifact. And here is kind of another one about the database, which is an artifact as well, right? But those event viewer logs will show you some good information, in fact, if there is a problem. Okay. Now let's that's verifying the portal, right? So let's kind of move that out of the way. That's installing the portal. That's verifying the portal. Now let's go. Well, we've already done that too. So I jumped ahead of myself, exploring and customizing the portal. Right? I showed you how you can do that for the self-service portal. I showed you the section for managed TPM and the drive recovery sections for the help desk portal. Right? Now, in terms of the drive recovery, this is where you want to have a drive that's corrupted or whatever, or a drive you've moved from one machine to another, and you need to recover it. So that's what that section is all about. The way that you do that is to basically essentially take a recovery package and run it against the drive and so on. A little bit deeper than I want to go, right now in this session, but very, very possible to do. All right. And I also showed you the audit reports in the help desk portal and also in ConfigMgr. Okay. Next. So one of the things you may want to do, probably want to do, but it's optional, is go through and encrypt your data as it's stored in the ConfigMgr database. So this is optional, right? So there's going to be a choice that you'll see when we create the policy for BitLocker to either encrypt or not. Now, I say there's a choice. It'll be grayed out. Well, let me say it this way. Sorry. Let me say it this way. There is a choice in the wizard. If you have chosen to introduce encryption, like we're going to do here, then that choice will be grayed out because there's no choice to make. You've chosen already to do encryption. If you've chosen not to do encryption in the database, then you will have to tick a box that allows storing the data in plain text format in the database, right? So it's really up to you, right? There's really three choices: plain text, encrypting the recovery key information in the database, or encrypting the entire ConfigMgr database. If you want to do that, that's fine. If you encrypt the entire ConfigMgr database, then in large environments, you may see up to a 25% performance degradation, but it is possible, right? And the information you're encrypting is going to include recovery keys, recovery packages, and different things. There is a cert requirement here. There's a script in SQL to go create that cert. So there's also a specific name requirement of the cert. So the cert must be called BitLocker management _cert, right? And so let me just jump to, there's some good documentation about how to do this. There's also some strategy about how to do this. You know, for example, if you're running on SQL 2016 or better, then any certs you create there are backwards compatible with SQL 2014 and later. So that's where you want to do it. If you have SQL 2016 in the environment and you create your cert on SQL 2014 or earlier, then those certs are not compatible with SQL 2016. So you definitely want to be creating your cert on the latest versions of SQL that you have. In terms of creating or establishing the encryption that you need, there's actually a few scripts, demo scripts in the documentation that will show you how to do that. I've already done it, and so let me go ahead and pull in my server, and we'll pull in SQL actually for my server and see if in fact I can show you at least the sample. As always, whenever you're pulling out of our documentation directly or anyone's documentation where you might have different ability to have things like single quotes, right? Single quotes tend to be interesting a lot because in regular typewritten text, you will see the single quote represented as kind of an opening single quote and a closing single quote and so on. SQL won't like that at all, right? And so I always make sure if there's syntax errors to go through and edit the script. And so this, for example, is an example of good opening and closing single quotes. And this is your first script where you would go through and create the encryption key if you don't have one. You'll need to change a few things, so make sure you're changing to your database name and so on in the script. So for the one that actually creates the encryption key, change the site database name, for example, to yours. If you want to change the password then to something you want, then great. In my case, I'm just using password. I think I need to put that in quotes. Sorry, I forgot to do that. Right? And then if you want to change the expiration date, then you will change the expiration date in here as well. And then you can go execute that. And in fact, mine's already got one, so no big deal, right? That will create it. Then there's another script kind of listed out there that will back up your certificate. There's another one to modify, to restore your certificate if you would like. And then there's finally one that will go through and verify your certificate is actually in place. Let me show you that one. So to verify, I'm going to open a new query window. I have the script on my clipboard. So I have this script, and so basically it's just a SQL query and then an if statement at the end. Let me make sure. It looks like there may be some things odd with syntax there and here maybe. Okay, so that cleared it up. So basically it checks in for the cert, and there's an if statement. If the count is 3, then select 1 or 0. Basically what this means is the script's going to output a 1 or 0. If it is a 1, that means that everything is in place. Let's execute that, and we got a 1. So that is effectively verifying the certificate to prove that it's there and that it's ready to go, right? Okay, so that's setting everything up, right, including the optional encrypting key or encryption certificate for recovery data. Now, all of that precursor work, and we're down to being ready to create our encryption policy. Okay, so let me pull in the ConfigMgr console. There it is. And so let's go create BitLocker encryption policy, which now that we actually have everything set up is relatively straightforward. So here's BitLocker management. I do have a demo policy already created. Let me go as if I did not. I'm just going to right-click, create a new policy, give it a name, and then choose what areas that I want to turn on right here, which adds different nodes to the wizard. Then I'm going to go into setup, and then what I'm basically deciding here is what configurations I want for my Windows 10 systems. And if you have systems prior to Windows 10, then you can turn on this section up here. So now that Windows 7 and all previous OSs are out of support, you may not need to do that, but still, it's here in case you... Okay, now that I have that, what kind of encryption do I want for my operating system drives, for my fixed data drives, and then I can move on. So in terms of client management, here's where I'm going to enable BitLocker management services if I choose to, and then select my recovery information, so recovery password and key package or recovery password only, and then notice this this grayed out, right? This grayed out piece is kind of what I referred to earlier whenever we set up the certificate for encrypting the key information in the database. If I did not have that certificate available, I would have to choose this option, right? But because I do have the database already encrypted, then, or that encryption cert already in the database, then this option isn't available to me at all to store my data as plain text, right? All right, and then enter the client polling frequency, if you will, for communicating forward to the database and storing things out. That's 90 minutes by default. You can choose what you like. For the operating system drive, do I want to enable those settings, right? And then what do I want to do in terms of TPM, in terms of allowing access to it? Are we going to allow TPM only? Are we going to allow a PIN as well? And what is our minimum PIN length that we want? And then we have summary, and then we will create our policy. I've already got my policy created, so I will just show it to you here. So one key thing, so very basic policy, but one key thing that I did to make sure that I know, in fact, that my policy is taking effect is that, I set up 256-bit encryption. By default, encryption is 128-bit. So if I get to my client and I see that my encryption is 256-bit through BitLocker, then I know that, in fact, I am good. All right, so let me clear this out of the way and close that out. Now, so right now, I do not have, actually I do have this deployed. That's right, so let me go to my client that doesn't have BitLocker enabled right now and see what we can do. So let me pull in my Windows 10 system, and so this is without BitLocker being enabled at all. And so let me show you a couple of things. So if I go into the control panel and look, so I'll look at BitLocker drive encryption. It is currently off. I also want to look at the ConfigMgr client applet and show that it has only got this one configuration right here, which is not anything except co-management, so I don't have my BitLocker settings there yet. And then also for programs and features, these are the files or the apps that I have installed, right? Okay, so let me go ahead and initiate a policy cycle on this, and we will wait for things to happen. Go back into Configuration Manager. I'm going to initiate a machine policy and go. And so I will pause the video while that processes, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we finally have the policy applied. And so just take a little tour of the system as it is. So first of all, on the Configurations tab, you will see that I have my demo BitLocker policy set up right here that has been deployed. So it is coming down as a compliance setting in here that can be evaluated. I set it to be every 5 minutes, so we'll see. But then also, I still have, oops, didn't mean to do that. I still have no BitLocker drive encryption at all turned off. But what I do have is under Programs and Features, I have the MBAM agent. So I think I mentioned before that if you enable BitLocker the first time, then one of the things that will happen is that the MBAM agent will automatically get installed. So behind the scenes, and you see that it did. Now, what's interesting is that BitLocker drive encryption has not initiated on this system automatically. Why is that? Well, there's actually a good reason. This is a VM, which BitLocker on a VM is fine. Actually, there's some little asterisks there. So on 1809 forward, BitLocker on VM should be no issue at all. Prior to that, there were some challenges, I understand. I've never tried it prior to 1809 because I'm recording the video now where we're well past 1809. But the other part of this is the MBAM agent, the BitLocker encryption process won't start at all if you're logged in with a RDP type session. So, and that's what I'm connected with. So in order to get this to actually start, I have to do a little bit of kickstarting. So I'm going to go into my command prompt and manage BDE -on C:. And so this should start to kick some things in. So the BitLocker requires a restart. So I'm going to go ahead and restart the machine. And then BitLocker encryption should begin. So let me go ahead and restart that. And I won't make you wait through the restart. It should happen pretty quickly, actually. But I won't make you wait through the restart. I'll be right back whenever it finishes. Okay, so the VM has restarted. As you see, let me log into it here. And hopefully encryption now is in process. Give it a second to log in. Now, while we're logging in, I'll just mention a couple of other bullet points more for awareness. So I'm showing you the BitLocker encryption policy and sending it out to a machine that is not BitLocker encrypted. But what if it is? Right? What if you configure BitLocker policy in ConfigMgr and deploy it to a system where the drive is already encrypted or is already in the process of encrypting from some other thing, right? Well, if you do that, then the encryption that is there or is in process will not be overridden. It will remain intact, right? And also, if you just accept the default settings as I showed you, then you will get AES 128-bit encryption. A lot of organizations don't want that; they want 256-bit, and so be aware of that whenever you configure the wizard. So now that the machine is back up and running, let's go back to the control panel and look at BitLocker drive encryption. And now we see that we are encrypting. Well, how do we know that we in fact have the policy from ConfigMgr? So I'm going to go back into the command prompt, manage BDE-status, right? And so now what I see is that my encryption method is 256-bit. The default is 128-bit. And so I know, just by doing what I did, that in fact my encryption is going according to policy. That I actually configured down. Okay, so that's creating the encryption policy. We have a lot more to talk about, so let's keep going. Well, actually, that's funny. I did both. I created the encryption policy and showed it to you in action as well. So we've covered this one already, but anyway. So let's go forward. We still have a lot to do and show you a couple of things. So starting to wind down, but now in the troubleshooting tips and tricks section for a bit. So I want to talk about things kind of broken down by the kind of system that we're looking at. Let's start on the server side. And so on the site server, we do have some interesting things that we can look at to kind of understand what's happening with BitLocker, to troubleshoot BitLocker. And so let me just pull back in the site server real quick, and we will look at SQL to get started. So here's the site server again, and let me launch SQL. Right now, anytime we're in SQL, it's a look and understand, but be very, very, very careful if you touch anything. But specifically, what I want to do here is go into the recovery tables. Okay, and this is where all of the BitLocker key information and so on is stored, the recovery information and so on. So I'm going to go expand the list of tables and then go down to recovery. If I can go up. Here we go. There. Right, so we have a whole bunch of recovery tables, and so I have recovery and hardware core and different things that I can look at, and we can look at all of these, but the main one that I want to look at is the recovery keys table, right? And so now this is just showing you where it is. This is not anything at all to say that you have to come in here to get your recovery information. No, that's what the portals are for, right? But this is where we store it. And so this, I just have one test machine, but you notice that I have three entries here because I've actually encrypted this machine 3 times. Yet if I look in the machines table, you'll see that I only have 1 entry. Why do I show you that? Right, so here's 1 entry. Why do I show you that? Because the question may come up, and in fact did come up with one person I was talking to about, do we keep the history of the keys? And the answer, based on the database, appears to be yes. Right? Now, another thing that I'm always interested in understanding is policy. Right? Whenever policy goes down to the machine, how does it get there? Where is it stored? How does it make its journey? Right? And so this is a server discussion, but to bring it together, I want to bring the client back in and show you. Actually, let me do it this way, because I think I put the logs on the desktop here, which is cool. If I did, right? So there are logs on the client side, and we'll look at those again in a minute. But these logs are very interesting for a couple of reasons. And first of all, in the BitLocker handler, you'll see the processing of the BitLocker management policy. And so if you have seen other ConfigMgr logs, you will see that this is a pretty good indicator that you're looking at ConfigMgr specific information. And why do I even say that? Why do I say ConfigMgr specific? Because there's also a log called the group policy handler where we're managing group policy and so on. But this long string of data is showing you that the policy for BitLocker is actually stored. Anytime you see this format, it means configuration item is how things are being implemented for given features. So configuration items would be applied to all sorts of areas of ConfigMgr, such as software updates, the application model, some things in OSD, certainly compliance settings in general here in BitLocker management. So this log, this is the client-side log. I have it here on the server just for convenience, but it's a client-side log, and it's showing me this entry, which tells me that I'm getting my BitLocker policy through a configuration item. Well, whenever I know that, I can then go to the database and try to ferret out what that looks like and so on. So let me show you. I'm down here in the recovery tables, but what I want to do now, since I'm talking about configuration items, is come up to my CI table. And so if I just scroll up here for a minute, I'll just show you the CI tables. There's a ton of them if you've never seen them before. There's a bunch, so we'll just go on up. And we're not going to go through them at all. I just will show you where I'm going to be focused. Right, so CI, come on, there we go, CI, right, and I'm going to be focused in on the configuration items table right there. So let me go do a new query, and I will do a select star from CI underscore configuration items there. And so if you do this in a production environment that does software updates and so on, you will end up getting millions of results, right? I do the select star just because I want to show you what I really care about is this CI unique ID, right? If I scroll down, you'll start to see some of the format. Let me just drill down a little bit. Yeah, so you'll start to see some of the format along here. So let me just do this. CI unique ID where CI underscore unique ID there equals, and I will put that long string in, and then I will execute that again. Right? And so I execute that, and I get one entry back. So this entry, in fact, is the BitLocker policy that I've created. And again, what do I care about here? I can look at this SDM package digest, and I can see a bit more about the specific policy if I need to troubleshoot something and I wonder if the policy is correct. You know, what this also tells me, and this is irritating me right now, but what this also tells me, I mentioned this is a configuration item. And so whenever I look at the client, I know what area of WMI that I should look in to be able to see what this configuration item looks like on the client. Well, so far I haven't been able to find it in WMI. I know it's there. I'll keep looking, but this is how it gets communicated down to the client, right? Okay, so not to belabor the point, just again a tour of this a little bit. So on the server side, that's the site server. Now let me pull that out of the way and let's shift over and go to the management point and look at it for a minute. So here's our management point. And so I want to look and show you the logs, first of all, that are relevant here. So if you go to your management point directory, right here, first of all, here's your SMS directory with all the things that you might care about, you know, for your management point and so on, the MP control log and different things. But if you come into specifically your SMS underscore CCM, and you go and look under Microsoft BitLocker Management and then logs, here you will have your recovery and hardware service logs, right? So that's interesting in case you have some different things you want to look at. These are SVC logs, and so you'll need that tool to really be able to read them. If I open it now with Notepad, it's not going to largely be in a friendly format. In fact, that one looks like it might be empty. Both of them are. So if you have content in this, you can get your SVC trace viewer right here and throw it into it, and it'll open it up and make it much more readable for you. This is empty, and so nothing to really see here, but there is good data there if you need it. Also, already talked about this whenever we installed the system, but I will go back to it again. In our normal SMS folder, under logs, I was just here, showed you MP control. So MP control is a great place to go and make sure that in fact the MP is working and communicating and succeeding whenever we do the test and successfully perform the check, and all of that is working against 443, no problem, right? Okay, so that's the MP. Now on the portals themselves, there's some logging, and I believe I've already showed this to you, but just to make sure. So back on the portals server, we do have the event logs, so let's start there. In fact, yeah. Okay, so already shown this, but seeing it a couple of times, especially if it's new to you, is not a bad thing. So waiting for applications and services to open up, then Microsoft. And then under that, we have Windows. And so under here, we have our MBAM right here. So this MBAM web is where we will see admin and operational stuff that's happening against this. Now, this is where I've already shown you that we're logging some things that aren't real about having to register the SPN. Don't need to do that, right? I believe that's kind of a holdover from when this was standalone. The same thing with the compliance database, but still, this area, the event viewer, is good information to review if you're having problems. Also, the logs themselves. So I did show these to you as well. Here under iNet Pub, you will have the BitLocker management section right here, and then logs for both the help desk and the self-service portal. You'll look at these with the SVC Trace Viewer, as I was referencing a minute ago. Just pull it in there, and there will be a red herring as well here, because it's also referring to the compliance database. There's no issue there, but still, good place to know where logs are being written so that you can kind of get a handle on things if things aren't going exactly right. Okay, so that's on the server side. Now, another thing that's very useful in that event log is we log a lot of errors in there as we progress, as we encounter different things. This is all in the documentation at that link above. I'm not going to go through it all, but I just wanted to call it out and show you the error code and then the interpretation that we can give it, which is very meaningful and helpful to be able to troubleshoot, right? So a lot of different error codes. Again, not going to go through it all. That's not the point. But definitely wanted to show that to you. Now, so that was the server side. Let's shift over to the client side for a minute. So I'm going to go back to my Windows 10 client, and I want to show you a few areas that we can go and look at. Right now, the logging. So I'll show you some logs. There's a couple of logs here that we can look at. Let's go to the CCM folder and logs, right? So I have a couple. So I've got the BitLocker management handler, and then I've got the BitLocker management group policy handler. So I don't remember if I said this earlier, so let me say it now. If you have BitLocker settings implemented through group policy, we can work alongside those with ConfigMgr, no problem. The thing that you want to avoid is having any conflicts, right? So make sure things are set the same, and shouldn't be an issue at all. But let's start with the BitLocker management handler. And also, before I'll start, talking about the logs themselves are good, but especially if you turn on verbose and debug logging, then you'll get a little bit more in the logs that will help you along the way. So let's look at BitLocker management handler. All right, so I'll just go down to the bottom. All right, this is where we see that we're processing the policy. So in fact, let me actually go back to the site server, because I think somehow that BitLocker or the verbose and debug got turned off here. Let me go look at these same exact logs, but now on the site server where I know that I had verbose and debug logging turned on. So I will start with the BitLocker management handler right here. And so here, this is just kind of starting the top of the processing loop. I'd edited this log so that it's starting at the top of the processing loop. I'm processing my BitLocker management policy. Processing my rule here. It's not compliant with my MBAM client installation, so it's going to go ahead and do the install. So I'm running the install package. All that's done there, right? And then it's going through and processing group policy settings and just rolling on through. So good information about this process and what's going on, and you'll see it roll through and you'll see it check. Right, you'll make sure that the MP is SSL capable, yes, so we can go through and continue to do some things, right? So pretty easy log to read, tells you where the WMI value is coming from, so we'll come back to that here in a minute. Okay, so that's the standard MBAM or BitLocker handler log. Here's the group policy log, right? So this will show you actually some really good information. It'll show you processing your group policy settings. It'll show you where in the registry those settings are. In my case, I keep getting this. This error simply means I don't have anything in group policy. So I keep getting the not found error message, right? But still, it's good information to be able to see what's going on and to know what's going on, right, in the logs. But we also have the event logs on the client. So let's go back to the client and look at the event logs. So here's back to the Windows 10 client. We'll run event viewer, event vwr.msc. Okay, good. All right, so if we go to applications and services and then wait on that, and then go down to Microsoft and then Windows, like we were. Come on. Come on. I did click it, right? There we go. Okay, good. Microsoft and then Windows. And then we look at MBAM. All right, so I have my MBAM event logs here that I can go look at and see if things are processing the way that they should. I've got a warning here, but still things are processing. So just good detail that I can look at through the event log. Now, event IDs also in the event log here are very meaningful. I can understand what's going on. So specifically, event ID 1 means policies applied successfully. I'll see other ones in here like event 29 that will show that the BitLocker policy recovery key has been stored, whatever. And I'll show you also a pointer to where you can see what the event ID is on the client, what it means here in just a minute. But a lot of good information here in the event logs. All right, now in GPO, so let's go look at GPO for a minute. Again, I don't have anything applied in GPO, but we can go look at it. So I'm going to add the GPO snap in. All right, so group policy object editor, good enough. And then we will go look at what policy options we have. Let me make this bigger. So in terms of local policy, computer configuration, and then administrative templates, move this over. And then we have Windows components. And then under Windows components, we want to look at BitLocker. So right here, BitLocker drive encryption. Again, I don't have anything configured here, but this is where all of your policies, look, actually it is. So this is enabled, right? I didn't touch it. I didn't touch that at all. But whenever the encryption started happening, that must have turned it on. We have the other options here that are available that could be configured through group policy, and we live side by side with group policy, no problem. Yeah, these are turned on too. So I never touched these, but through turning on BitLocker on the drive, that must have turned those on. So good to go, right? We can see what's going on there. Also in the registry, right? So let's open up. I'll close this. Let's open up the registry and see what we have there. So regedit. I'm going to run that here. All right, cool. Oh, come on, don't do that. Let's do it this way. Okay, so I'm going to open up the registry and browse down to local machine. Here, software, right here, and then policies here. And then it's not real obvious, like Microsoft, it's not real obvious what we're looking at. We're looking for things related to BitLocker. Well, they're going to be under the key here. So here's our MDOT settings and so on. So we can see the settings and different things on the client, where our key recovery server is. So we're pointing to the management point, which is then going to shuttle it to the database and different things and so on, right? So there's some good detail under FVE. There's some more detail. So good stuff. And then finally, well, two more places in our tour here. So I'm going to go back to the root of the drive. So some configuration files for MDOT. So under program files, we have Microsoft, and then we have this as the installation location for MDOT, MBAM agent. And so if we look through here, let me just sort by file type, scroll on down, we'll have a couple of config files. Now, I show these to you just so you know where they are. No real reason to change anything like this, and I'm not going to go into what the details inside them mean, but basically it's XML that will allow you to have configurations over the client UI and different things, right, that are here. Okay, but largely the MBAM agent should be totally invisible in the Microsoft integration world. Okay, let me go get, I thought I had it, let me go get WMI Explorer, and I want to show you a couple places in WMI. All right, let's say $1, $2. Come on. Go. All right, hang on. okay, what I wanted was WMI Explorer, so I just went and got it from my other system and pasted it in. So I'm going to run this as administrator, and I want to show you a couple of places, really just one in WMI. And I mentioned I was hunting for the location of the MBAM policy on the client, and so it is a compliance setting, and so I still believe that it's under the compliance settings namespace in WMI on the client, but it may just be in here. So under Microsoft, we have our MBAM entry, right? And so we have different settings that we have for our volume information and so on here that we can look at, right, in volume settings and so on. So this is where we do store some of the policy. I do still believe that it's probably in the config manager namespace somewhere, but I haven't found it yet, so maybe it's not, but it is definitely there in WMI. All right, so that is kind of a look at the way things, or the components, the pieces, the different things you can look at on the server side, on the client side, that I wanted to talk to you about. Okay, now here are the client event log entries and what they mean. Here's the path to where you can find this information. And then finally, some tips and tricks. So just a few things here, right? First item in the list is MBAM documentation. I give that to you because MBAM documentation is pretty robust out there, and while this is integrated through Config Manager, and a lot of that may not be necessarily applicable, it's really good information to understand the concepts and the components and how the MBAM setup works and so on. I also mentioned the MBAM groups whenever I did show you the script for setting up the MBAM portals, and mentioned that you must make sure that the group names are accurate. We don't validate those through the script. I mention it again here because it's so important, right? If you don't have one telltale sign that you don't have the group information correct, is that you won't be able to authenticate to the help desk portal, right? In my case, I have a domain controller that's kind of a little bit flaky, and whenever I created my group names there, I couldn't authenticate to the MBAM portal, so I ended up having to turn that domain controller off and use my secondary domain controller to create the groups, and then it worked just fine, right? In terms of this whole discussion around Config Manager and BitLocker integration and so on, right? 1910 is the first place where the BitLocker integration has showed up. That's what you're seeing now, right? We are at a place when this recording is happening where 1910 is the latest. So I'll say the next few things, but just understand that I don't have any particular knowledge or insight into what's planned or what's coming, just some guesses, based on history and the way things look right now and so on. So BitLocker integration, whenever it was released in Config Manager. We had the concept of pre-release items that come into the console that you can play with, and they're not fully finished yet, right? And then eventually they move into a release status. Well, the BitLocker management piece was immediately released as a released item. It wasn't pre-release, right? Looking at how this thing works and some things that aren't there today, I kind of do expect there to be some further development on this. A couple of examples. The install experience isn't terrible, but having to run manual scripts is not the cleanest experience, so hopefully there will be some cleanup there to make the install experience a little bit more seamless. Right now we do not support enhanced HTTP. SSL is required. SSL is not something that's in the vast majority, or the vast majority of Config Manager environments I've come across don't use SSL. They use standard HTTP. So I wouldn't be surprised to see enhanced HTTP come through at some point. Also, we have this cloud management gateway thing out there that right now isn't integrated, but would be probably something that will happen over time, I would guess, right? Now, in terms of migration from MBAM, if you have MBAM today and you want to move to Config Manager, then that migration is pretty darn seamless, right? Re-encryption, if you have your drives encrypted already, then we're not going to re-encrypt those drives whenever you move to config manager will leave those drives as they are, right? And so on. If you deploy BitLocker management policy that is different than what your drive's current protection is, then we'll report non-compliance, but we'll leave the drives protected, right? We don't want to remove the protection that is there because it doesn't exactly match what we have. In terms of the TPM password hash, this is interesting because the TPM password hash is actually presented forward one time. So if you have a previous MBAM client that's already there and has already reported the TPM password hash at that stage, it's not going to re-report it to Config Manager unless you, in fact, clear the TPM and remove it and then re-encrypt it and so on. And I've mentioned group policy, that we will live right alongside group policy, no problem, fully compatible. Just make sure that if the device receives both GPO and Config Manager settings, that there's no conflict, right? One thing also to note is Config Manager doesn't implement all of the MBAM group policy settings. If you want to add those group policy settings, then use GPO for that, and it's absolutely no problem at all. And so with that, we have reached the end of our discussion, and so we'll wrap things here, and we'll see you next time.